Welcome everyone to a new episode of NeCXt that's about to turn your approach to business and creativity on its head. What do the discovery of America, penicillin, and the invention of Velcro all have in common? They were all born from serendipity, those happy accidents that spark game-changing ideas. And what if I told you that this very concept could be the secret ingredient to unlock a flood of creative innovation in your business? Today, we're not diving into the latest tech trends or tools, but rather into a mindset, one that's about seeing the world in a way that turns unexpected moments into opportunities. A few months ago, I found myself in the Silicon Valley, surrounded by tech visionaries who casually dropped the term serendipity over and over again, something I had never encountered in my 15 plus years in the corporate world. So I dug deeper into the concept, and what I discovered was fascinating. Serendipity is a true catalyst for creativity, a force that drives those eureka moments we are all looking for. It's about making discoveries not by searching for them, but by being open to the unexpected. And in today's volatile and uncertain world, companies that embrace this mindset have a serious edge in adapting and thriving. So how can we harness serendipity to foster a culture of creativity and innovation in our own business? That's exactly what we're going to explore today. And I'm very happy to welcome Armando Matijevic, founder of the frontier technology community SplitX, a visionary who's made serendipity and the art of fiaca central to his approach in both Silicon Valley and beyond. So get ready. This episode is about to shake up the way you think about creativity and business success. Armando, welcome to this podcast. And let's start maybe by introducing yourself and share the mission of SplitX.
Thank you so much, David. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is, as you said, Armando Matijevic, one more time. I come from a beautiful city of Split on the coast of Croatia, small Mediterranean peninsula. And right now I'm in San Mateo, Silicon Valley, Bay Area, where I spend 4 to 5 months out of the year for the past 8 years. I'm a founder of SplitX, which is a global community of leaders in frontier technology, where we serve as a platform as a catalyst for connections, partnerships, and investments. And the well-being is a kind of like a big center of everything that we do. And in the long run, the vision of SplitX is to redefine what success and leadership means, where we put the well-being at the center of it. And yeah, that's that.
All right, thank you very much. And being part of this community, I can tell how valuable and insightful it is to be surrounded by those great visionaries and founders and creators. So let's deep dive into serendipity. Serendipity is about finding unexpected delights or discoveries when looking for something else. You personally, you've turned this into an art of living. So why focus on serendipity rather than just luck?
Well, serendipity has played, I got to say this first, serendipity has played, I could say, a pivotal role in everything that I do, because from the very beginning, I was always curious, and I think that's also a big correlates to serendipity. You have to be curious, right? Because luck, eventually, you might get a stroke of luck, but if you're not open to it, right, might not never happen, right? So that's where the serendipity comes in, the openness of, this idea that anything is possible, And in that case, if you truly believe that, then anything might as well happen, right? And I can give you one of the first examples that comes to my mind, and it's connected to me being here in the States. Back in the day, I was a founder back home in Croatia. It's a small community, small startup environment. And I was always trying to get to the States, right? And it's the whole story, but to cut it shorter, I first ended up in Montreal because I applied to this Founder Institute Accelerator back then, and they had this cohorts around the world, and they were supposed to run one in Split, but we didn't have enough people to apply. And eventually I was open to this idea of applying somewhere else. And, they said, you can go apply to any city. And I picked Montreal because back then it was really hard to get a visa for the States. So eventually I went to Canada, came back, and then I've joined my cousin's startup back then. And we were looking ways to get to the States. And as I was trying to find all these channels to and people to talk to, I left a comment on a TechCrunch article, and that comment was seen by the investor from Palo Alto, and he reached out to me, and it was surreal. So I'm at one of the islands back home in flip flops, and we jumped on the impromptu Skype call. It was a video call back then, and I'm like talking to him, and he says, I like what you're doing. You should be here. And I said, we're trying to get there. And then he says, well, you're lucky because my buddy Adam Draper runs an accelerator. You should apply. So basically, long story short, we ended up going to the States and all of that. So that was like a jump forward. But this was something that I wasn't expecting, this particular connection, right? But it happened because I was open to the idea, and I put all my energy into, figuring out the way to get there. And that's how, serendipity came in. So it's all about setting up the framework and, channeling the energy towards this goal that you want to achieve. Let's put it that way.
That's a very, very good example, and clearly shows that it's not about luck. It's provocating luck and setting up, as you said, the right framework. And we'll come to that later, I guess, because when we relate to, serendipity to corporate world, one thing that comes into my mind listening to you is the need for a vision, for an end destination. That's where we want to go, because if you don't have that vision, if you wouldn't have that vision to go to the States, like, I don't think things would have come that way. You have made serendipity or embraced serendipity in your daily life. How has that impacted you beyond this example?
Yeah, so the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is the range of network that I've fostered, because everywhere that I go, I'm open to these new connections in a way that I don't take anyone for granted, And of course, we have to be careful with our time. We can't just go out there and talk to every single person, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so regardless of where I am, being, back home in Croatia or here in Silicon Valley, one thing that I do, I always try to create my own bubble. So what that means, and I'll give you a concrete example. Right next door, we have this little Italian joint where we come in every single morning to drink coffee, right? And over time, we created this local community of people who come in every single morning, and that's our bubble, right? And then we have certain core values, which are really informal, and then we welcome people in, and every single day, someone new comes in because it's in places located on really one of the frequent streets out here in Silicon Valley. So a lot of people go past left and right. People come in every single day and they see us in the corner. There's like 10, 15 of us guys coming in every single morning. And, it's an inviting energy. They come in, we're like, come join us, right? So it's about setting up the framework. And this is what I do. As you said, I kind of turned it into art of living. I do the same thing regardless of where I'm located. And it helped me so much because, when you take no one for granted, it opens up to all these new connections that you probably didn't expect it. But in the long run, and this is the key, if you connect with someone, right, and potentially, or right now there's nothing to it, right? Let's put it that way. But in the long run, you don't expect anything out of it, right? But in the long run, you never know, something might come out of it. So I would say, it's about setting up the framework for it.
That leads me to the next point that you already kind of illustrated with this example. When I read about serendipity, I came on this French author, Sylvie Catelin, who says that indeed you cannot plan for serendipity, but you can create the conditions that favor serendipity. So in your daily life and in the business and in the events that you're hosting, how do you create this context? So I understand you have those bubbles that you just mentioned, but what else? And for instance, about SplitX, how do you create that spirit for people who may not have it and are coming from across the world?
Yeah, well, this is this is a great point, and I love talking about this. I take immense pride into the whole design of our approach, and the way how it developed over the years. And what I did basically, I took my mindset and kind of embedded it within the whole SplitX system throughout the whole system. So when it comes to events, for example, what we do is we invite all the members and we send out the open call application for whomever, right? If you are a frontier tech leader, if you're someone building something, extraordinary, come join us, right? So it's an inviting atmosphere for sure. And then people apply. And then we have a couple of filtering systems. So the first filtering system is we check people's credentials, right? The easy one, right? Google, LinkedIn, stuff like that. And then if we don't know this person, we ask, it's a mandatory video call. And then what I do, I talk to each and every person coming in. It's a short video call, 15, 20 minutes, just to connect, to have that connection. And then what I do, I set up the framework right there. I tell each and every person, we are going to connect. We're going to express our true selves, and we're just going to come out to potentially create, genuine connections, real partnerships, things like that, right? So I set up the framework from the get-go, and I tell each person, you might end up on a panel. So we don't reveal the topics nor the panelists up front. So the agenda is pretty simple. You know what to expect roughly, but you don't know the details. So as the event approaches, we send out the 3 simple questions to everyone to crowdsource the ideas for the topics. And then together with the advisory board, we pick the topics and we figure out who would be best for the panel. But we don't communicate that to anyone, right? And then as you saw it, as you experienced it right there at the event, we literally call you up, you're next, come up on stage, right? So this is that type of intentional serendipity, right? And the reason why this works is because there are steps that you take and you communicate it directly to each and every person. In a sense, they know what to expect to a certain extent, right? They don't know what to expect, in details, but they have the sense of it. So I think this idea of setting up a framework where you can express your true self and allow your voice to be heard, because especially the idea of, I might end up on a panel. So you're kind of thinking, I should be ready, what should I talk about, right? And you don't know the topic even, right? So I think it's a design. So that's one of the examples.
Yeah, and I can tell indeed it's a bit scary the first time, but even if you're prepared and you know that you're going to embrace the unknown, but it's still a step to go. But I think that you're right. You set up the rules of the game up front very clearly. You prepare people, and then the magic happens or not. But it's a risk, and we'll come back to this notion of risk in a few minutes. I like what you said because it reminds me, me, being a participant in one of your events, and there's this notion of, will I be called? Will I go on stage or whatsoever? And I'd like to turn that into the notion of uncertainty. So again, some people who research on serendipity suggest that embracing uncertainty is key to serendipity. So do you think that this spirit of embracing the unknown is what the founders and the creators have all in common?
I think so. Definitely. One thing that founders and creative people have in common is the skill of resilience. So, you got to be resilient, right? And you got to embrace the unknown because, especially the last couple of years, the technology is the rate of exponential development is crazy, right? And you don't know what to expect, right? You can plan for it. We all do plans, right? We do business plans, we do personal plans and stuff like that. But it's you don't know what's going to happen. Right? None of us do, right? So what we need is a game plan focused on our health. And this is my take, right? At the end of the day, this is a one man's opinion, but that's what I do. I focus everything around my well-being. I think I've told you, I'll give a short example. Kind of, I apply the same principle when creating serendipitous environment. It's an intentional, right? So what I do with the well-being part, I schedule it. So, for example, when I'm back home, since it's It's a peninsula. We have a lot of beaches, and there's this whole, Mediterranean lifestyle. I have it scheduled in my calendar between 12 and 2 p.m. every single day. No excuses. It's non-negotiable. I turn off my phone. I go to the beach. I drink a coffee for half an hour. I play this game, this really unique game that we play at home in shallow waters, and I just disconnect, right? And then, coming 2 p.m., I go back to work, right? So this is something that I invest my time heavily in because, and it relates to your question, because I play the long game. And this is what I advise founders and SplitX members, and it's big part of our core values. Let's play the long game, right? SplitX is being built as a legacy business, and that's how I want it to be, right? And in order to do so, I got to survive, right?
Yeah.
We all have to, right? And in order to survive and in order to thrive, we have to focus on our health. So I'm like, a lot of people over the years, when we're talking and they hear, about my lifestyle, and they're like, oh, those 2 hours that you invest in the middle of the day, you could do this, you could do that, you could be much more efficient, whatever. I call it, I call bullshit. It's bullshit, because if I'm healthy enough and if I survive, right, then I can easily embrace the unknown, right? Yeah. I can be resilient and I can accept that anything can happen on the both sides of the spectrum, being bad or good, right? So that's, some of the techniques that I apply. It's pretty simple. It's there's no magic behind it, no complicated science. It's pretty simple. You prioritize your health and everything else comes next.
Well, easier said than done, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
But what I hear in between the lines, and it's very interesting, is again this notion of bubble. You mentioned earlier during the discussion that bubble you have in the cafe to create that framework, that context where people are welcome. This is a little bit the same. So you have your bubble when you're in Croatia, where you disconnect, you do sports, you focus on yourself, on your well-being, on your health, and that bubble is the moment where you can re-energize and then get out in the world and embrace uncertainty and embrace the unknown and nurture that feeling of resilience that you mentioned all the founders do have, together with curiosity. I'd like to come back now to the corporate world. We all know today's volatile economy is setting up a context full of unknown. Things are not certain anymore. And it is sometimes driving some companies back to the basics. They're going back to their roots. We've done that for 20 years, so we're secure, in the safe space, and we're going to focus on that. Not saying it's bad, but could embracing serendipity help those traditional companies to foster a bit more of creativity and maybe go beyond that extra mile? And how could they start? Because we cannot tell every employee to go out 2 hours and do sports or whatsoever.
Fortunately, no.
But how could we, foster that spirit in traditional corporate world?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because it also largely depends on the size of the company, right? The bigger the company, the harder it is to implement those type of techniques. But it has to be intentional, as we heard, and it has to be communicated in a way so it kind of breaks the silos that usually corporates have. Obviously, like you said, we cannot have people, taking 2 hours break and going to the beach. It doesn't work like that. But maybe, we all need something like Fiaca. You did mention it at the beginning as something that we do, and I'd love to explain it to the listeners, to the viewers, a little bit about Fiaca. And
please do, because it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know it's really part of your life. So please.
Yeah, it is. It's a big one. So in short, Fiaca is a term in Dalmatia, where I'm from, the ancient part of Croatia, which refers to this sense, this feeling of being content, what you have, and being so chill and present in the moment that you don't care about anything else, right? And for us back home, it's a lifestyle. It comes easier to us, right? And in a way, it's also a digital detox. It's a digital disconnection, right? Something that we we all need these days, right? And, I keep hearing more and more people talking about it. So basically this fiaca lifestyle that we have at home, and as you've seen it, it's big part of our core values. And I've been, promoting fiaca and placing it as the kind of the underlying emotion for SplitX, where I inspire and invite people in our network to take more fiaca time, right? To be more present in the moment. So I think it's a really powerful way because there's a good background story. When you look it up, the way how fiaca came to be, and by the way, there's other Mediterranean countries have the similar terms. For example, like dolce far niente in Italy. And when people read up on it, when they understand the whole notion of being present, being happy with what you have, and not caring about the outside world, we need more of that, right? And the story of fiaca, the origin story of how it came to be, our ancestors, working up early in the morning, and then, the sun would hit up, they would find a shade to get some food and just rest and just, do nothing, right? So we need more of that. So basically, going back to the corporate, maybe this would be a wild thing to do, but I can totally see corporates having a wellness program or implementing fiaca or something similar, right? But we need to have team leaders, vouching for this and implementing it some way. So it's a tricky one, like I said, for the corporates, but we need an intentional wellness program. Let's put it that way. But from what I've seen, a lot of these programs are, really basic, and they don't stick, because obviously without someone continuously lobbying for it, it kind of, people lose motivation.
Yeah, no, you're right, and we're not going to solve that problem today in this discussion, but the intention today is just to spread a few ideas and thoughts to our listeners, our viewers, because this is a challenge that many corporates are facing. How can we think outside of the box? How can we be more creative in our approach to the business? Because it's time right now to change things and not to be complacent with how we've done business over the past 20 years, for instance. And I truly believe that Serendipity is a catalyst for that. And this is why I thought it would be very interesting to talk about it with you. When we talk about serendipity, we mentioned that it's being open to many things, including the risk of failure. And this is a big one. So how do you and other founders who embrace serendipity, who embrace uncertainty, how do you manage this fear or the risk of failure and failing?
So it's going to sound crazy, but I love failures because I strongly believe it's the only way to truly learn. Because when you're getting new information, especially, something that is, on the negative side of the spectrum, it's a new information, right? And then your brain creates new neural connections, right? I read up on it. I'm not an expert whatsoever, but there's a logical explanation behind it. So, when you're, by the way, especially, when you reach certain age, your brain is a, set of programs, and it's all about the habits that you form over the course of the years, right? And then, you can especially tell, with the really old people when they do not receive new information, and they often, start losing memory, and they, it's a high risk of dementia and stuff like that. So that's why people who socialize a lot, especially when you're older, when you get old, and then, you socialize with friends and you receive new information, right? And that's keeping your brain healthy, right? So this kind of correlates, or at least is my take on it, with the failures. Like it's an opportunity to learn, right? And then the other thing that really helps me with, embracing the unknown and the failures and everything associated with that is this awareness of fragility of human life and awareness of time. And what I mean by that is when you look at the past, everything already happened. What you and I are experiencing, it all happened, right? There's nothing new. I mean, human beings, we're all the same. Oh, 2 years before and now, we all want the same things. So I kind of remind myself, regardless of what happens, it's gonna be good, and you're gonna get up one day, you're gonna be 80, 90. You're gonna look back on all these troubles that you're experiencing right now. You're gonna ask yourself, do they matter? No, they don't, right? So what matters is obviously your loved ones, people you care about, and your health. So that's why I keep on going back, almost in every conversation regarding these things, put your health in the center, prioritize your health over anything else. Because if you do that, that's also going to help with embracing failures, right? Because your business might go down or, whatever a negative that can happen in your, but if you keep your health, it's going to be easier. If you focus on your health, it's going to be easier to embrace the unknown. So that's, in a sense, what I do to simplify it. I zoom out, right? If it's something, and especially as an entrepreneur, it's constant ups and downs, right? So what I do, I just zoom out, right? And I do this little technique. I go like 50 plus. So I'm 38 now. So I do, okay, 50 years from now, how's my day going to be like? What's going to matter, right? You do this mental practice, because we as humans, we're visual beings. Our brain functions in 3D, right? So you go into little details. You look, I'm 88. I'm looking at my wrinkled skin. I'm like, what matters the most, right? So prioritizing, I would say.
Yeah, prioritizing. And basically, when I listen to you, it's also about being aware and open enough to see and try to identify the positive into what's happening, a lesson, a learning, or whatsoever, and turn this negativity into something positive or something that makes you stronger. In French, you say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit what you're saying. Listening to you is very interesting because we started with the notion of serendipity and we're talking about well-being. We're talking about breaking silos, horizontality. So openness, communication through horizontal thinking seem to be key at the end of the day to foster serendipity. From your experience, what else has successfully driven creative thinking in your life or in your companies?
I think curiosity would be a big one. Even though I have to admit sometimes I go overboard. I tend to be curious way too much. So you end up, trying to discover too many things, right? So that's the other problem that we're not going to go into, but the overflow of the information that we're all experiencing right now.
Well, it comes back to your prioritization that you just said as well.
That's
somehow.
right. That's right. And I'm trying my best to filter, all these curiosity points, let's call them, because with AI these days, with the ability to gather the information and to source it towards your, tools, whatever else, what kind of tools you use, it's just too much, right? And we have to prioritize what we're going to learn about. But being curious has led me to, be more open to creating new connections and eventually creating connections that are genuine, that can yield friendships, partnerships, business opportunities, stuff like that. So I would say, curiosity is a good starting point as well, and taking Noah for granted. And I already said this one, but I'll go back to it because it connects to the whole thing. And you got to listen. That's the other thing that I've noticed these days, in just the ability to listen to people, to understand, especially these days with so much noise around all of us. We need to have empathy to one another as we all battle our own demons, right? So I would say, it all kind of correlates.
Yeah, and makes a lot of sense. We're getting to the end of the discussion, unfortunately. I think we could talk for hours, but
for sure.
If there would be one final piece of advice you'd like to leave with our listeners today, what would it be? Be curious, take nothing for granted, something else?
Yeah, well, all of that combined. But I would say if I could pick one thing, I would repeat myself: prioritize health. prioritize health. Don't get sucked into the bullshit. Look back. Here's a good practice, just in short, good practice that I do sometimes. Go back 5 years, 10 years in the past. Think about the famous entrepreneur who you admired, someone you look up to, right? There's a high chance that person, went down, the business went down. And go a little bit into the past, go back emotionally. Maybe you admired someone, you were impressed, maybe you were a bit jealous. That's okay, we're humans. And then go back to the present time. It's gone. It's all gone. Right?
True.
What stayed? You, us, right? Our health and our ability to thrive and to care about the loved ones and people around us. So that's it. Health above everything else.
All right. And I think that's a great conclusion. So as we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear that Serendipity stands out as a powerful driver of creative thinking, offering companies a fresh perspective on innovation. We've seen it. Frontier technologies companies have proven that embracing these concepts leads to tangible success. So by creating the right environment for serendipity to flourish through openness, communication, cross-functional collaboration, companies can unlock new levels of creativity even during headwinds and times of uncertainty. But let's not forget well-being, key factor as well. When employees feel valued, safe, empowered, they're more likely to take risks and contribute to a culture where serendipity can thrive. After all, people, when they're free to explore, when they're free to test, free to learn, free to fail, this is, I think, the trigger to creativity. And that's where well-being and being ready helps to create and to nurture this culture of change, because at the end, it's a culture of change.
So well said.
So the choice is all ours. Everyone has to make the choice. But as you said, the future is full of possibilities and it's up to us to make the most out of them. So Armando, thank you very much again for your time today. It was a real pleasure to talk about serendipity, well-being, and better understand how you do that with SplitX and how other founders embrace this notion in their daily life. And to all of you, thank you for listening. We really hope that today's conversation sparked new ideas and insights to help you lead with innovation and purpose. And if you like this discussion, don't hesitate to share it and stay tuned on NeCXt for more exciting discussion about what's next. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.